This FIFA World Cup 2026 already feels different because there are more host cities than ever before, which means more cultures, more fans, more accents all coming together. And seeing people learn each other's chants 1 minute and then argue about football in 5 different languages the next is why we love the World Cup. The world coming together is almost as beautiful as the beautiful game itself, which is why I teamed up with Airbnb to bring fans my favorite spots across host cities to explore together. Catch my Rex on Trevor Noah's World Cup watch party on YouTube.
Comedian Trevor Noah is being heavily criticized for taking money from Airbnb. Joe Gebbia, who's 44 years old, is the co-founder of the company. He is the same guy who promotes the John Birch Society. One message contained hateful, anti-immigrant rhetoric.
A secretive far-right group started in the late 1950s called the John Birch Society says it's aimed at bringing about less government and more responsibility, also aimed at restoring the republic. And that's according to the vision of the founding fathers. Now, our next guest argues the ideals of the Birch Society have influenced today's Republican Party and the rise of former President Donald Trump. Historian and professor at George Washington University, Matthew Dallek, is the author of the new book, Birchers, How the John Birch Society Radicalized the American Right.
We're in our isolationism, a kind of anti-interventionism versus internationalism, a more explicit racism, the conspiracy theories, and a more violent, apocalyptic, anti-establishment mode of politics. Also, at times, a hardline culture war. Those ideas, there are other ideas as well, but I think that those were the core beliefs that the Birchers promulgated. And those ideas, I think, were picked up by successors to the society.
If unaware, the Southern Poverty Law Center wrote of its ardent supporters, they are conspiracy theory-loving, UN-hating, federal government-despising, Ron Paul-supporting, environmental-bashing, Glenn Beck-watching true believers.
The John Birch Society was a far-right organization that was begun by a candy maker, the candy maker who created such childhood favorites as the Sugar Daddy and the Junior Mints. Robert Welch said that Dwight Eisenhower was a communist. And Robert Welch said that the civil rights movement was run by the communists. There were many, many other conspiracy theories that Robert Welch got involved in.
First, we have to start with William F. Buckley.
He says that the 14th and 15th Amendments are inorganic accretions tacked onto the Constitution by the victors at war by force. I mean, those are important amendments. He said that in his essay, Why the South Must Prevail, that the white community is so entitled to take measures to prevail politically, because for the time being, it is the advanced race. So this is the stuff he was saying.
Well, explicit white supremacy.
More from the SPLC. Charges of racism and anti-Semitism have dogged the John Birch Society since its earliest days. They opposed the civil rights movement and its legislation, saying the African American freedom movement was being manipulated from Moscow with the goal of creating a Soviet, you see the word republic, in the southern United States. The society was a close ally of Alabama's segregationist Governor George Wallace and reportedly had 100 chapters in and around Birmingham, Alabama's largest city, as well as chapters across the rest of the state. The Airbnb co-founder also made news when then mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani, then a two-time opponent of former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, blasted the founder as the single largest donor to a pro-Cuomo super PAC who promotes vile and racist messages about immigrants. Some of those screenshots include, "Don't let the left gaslight you. Voting to deport migrants is a vote to protect women." Gebbia promoted another message. Mass migration kills culture. Lastly in the thread, remigration is mainstream. These are white supremacist slogans and rhetoric. Now here's the thing, it is not just Airbnb. In January of 2022, Gebbia joined the Spurs investor group as its newest strategic partner, wrote the team's official website. They'd add, this move has been approved by the NBA Board of Governors and executed as of today. With his businesses, there are huge red flags at play. Harvard's business school would examine bias within Airbnb. They published the following. The raw data show that non-Black and Black hosts receive strikingly different rents, roughly $144 versus $107 per night on average. Non-Black hosts, they continue, earn roughly 12% more for a similar apartment with similar ratings and photos relative to Black hosts. Clinton Yates would recap for Anscape. With this nation's history of housing discrimination, both legal and otherwise, the company has a chance to serve as a vessel for a discussion that a lot of people don't feel comfortable having. It's a lot more direct and a tad easier to digest than, say, the effects of redlining from yesteryear. But you've got to let everyone through the door first. And with Noah, there should have been red flags raised internally. And I'm going to tell you why. That company Noah partnered with and did fun ad reads for is part of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions list. The official BDS website recaps that Airbnb, along with Booking.com and Expedia, remain as listed companies in the UN database of being implicated in Israel's illegal colonial settlement enterprise. Airbnb, based in the States, Booking Holdings, based in the Netherlands, and Expedia, stateside, all offer rentals in illegal Israeli settlements built on stolen Palestinian land. One investigation by The Guardian would find the listings that appear on either Airbnb or Booking.com could host more than 2,000 people. That's as of August 2024. It continues, 760 rooms being advertised in hotels, apartments, and other holiday rentals in illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. Another portion by operating in settlements, multinational companies, including Booking.com and Airbnb, are violating international law, human rights activists warn. Booking.com and Airbnb are among 16 non-Israeli companies identified by the UN as having ties to Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Sari Bash, I'm sorry if I said that incorrectly, a human rights lawyer who also works for Human Rights Watch, gave a stunning quote that I will read to you right now. In allowing properties in Israeli settlements to be listed on their sites, Airbnb and Booking.com are contributing to land grabs, crippling movement restrictions, and even the forced displacement of Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem, abuses that Israeli authorities commit in order to maintain oppression and domination over Palestinians as part of the crimes against humanity of apartheid. That last word is very important, especially for Trevor Noah.
People that are growing up today aren't aware of what the apartheid is.
No.
What does that environment feel like emotionally for you?
To understand the apartheid system, I always try and break it down for people. People think of like racism and they go like, oh, it's racism. And I'm like, no, it's a much more insidious system that was designed to oppress people based on the color of their skin. The apartheid system was a culmination of all of the worst ideas from around the world in and around race. The architects of apartheid explored what the Australians did with the Aboriginal people. They explored what the Dutch did. That's where the word apartheid comes from. They looked at what the Germans did, during the rule of the Nazis. They looked at every type of racism, including in the US. Technically speaking, my mother, my father, and myself weren't allowed to live in the same area. That's how granular the system was.
It just feels wrong and ironic that someone like Noah, who speaks up for Palestinians, who speaks out against apartheid, would take money from a company that benefits from it.
In this sense, Airbnb is not just profiting off of settler colonialism, but they're also directly profiting off of apartheid. The West Bank, by the way, isn't the only area in which Airbnb actively benefits off tourist industries that are built upon settler colonial projects, right? There are Airbnbs scattered across places like Hawaii and Puerto Rico as well. You'll notice in all three of these examples that Airbnb is directly profiting off of militarized settler colonial occupations, whether they be Israeli or American. And in all of these instances, they're also taking away critical housing supply from the very communities they exist in. That's a sizable problem, not just in those three circumstances, but for countless communities that Airbnb exists in, because people are incentivized to buy these properties, and instead of renting them out locally or enabling people to be homeowners, instead they're used as these temporary rental facilities that stay empty for a vast majority of the year. And it's incredibly unfortunate because Trevor Noah is someone who I genuinely on this issue thought would be a little bit better.